All right, let's get going. What do you say?
I love it.
Well, welcome everybody. It's so great to see you here. Welcome to our holiday prep rally. You see what we did there?
That was not canned. We actually have a studio audience made up of some pretty amazing environmentalists.
And they are that excited. Right. So we're coming to you live from this beautiful kitchen. We'll say a little bit more about it in a minute. But
Absolutely.
First, if I could have the next slide. A little bit about the Building Decarbonization Coalition. My name is Matt Rusteika. I'm here, of course, with Rachelle Boucher, our chef in residence. At the Building Decarbonization Coalition, we deck the halls with tons of heat pumps.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about those.
We're going to be inducting around the Christmas tree today. But in all seriousness, at the BDC, we have coalition in our name.
Yep.
And what we do is we bring together everybody involved in the clean energy transition for buildings,
yep.
manufacturers, other folks from the supply chain, NGOs, nonprofits, state and local government entities to really work together to chart a path towards zero emission buildings in the United States. As you can see on the slide here, you can sign up for our newsletter. We'd be happy if you did it. And don't forget that membership is free. So hit that membership page on the BDC website. Next slide, please. Thank you as always to our Trailblazer members. These folks have supported our webinar series and a lot of our other movement activities here at the BDC. So I would be remiss not to thank these folks. Go check them out. Next slide. Don't forget about these upcoming events that we're having at BDC. We've got a great webinar series coming up this fall and winter. On the 19th, that's next week, we have our California policy call, learn all about what's going on in California for building decarbonization. On December 12th, we've got our State of the Union post-election decarb outlook. That ought to be an interesting one. Yeah, that's going to be good. So don't miss it. That's going to be not to miss. And then our next California policy call coming up on the 17th. Next slide, please. Just a few things about the webinar logistically. Everyone's muted. So communicate via the chat. You can ask questions in the chat. Feel free to use the chat to comment. We have folks on our end checking it out, looking at the chat. We'll answer your questions at the end in a Q&A. This webinar is being recorded, just to remind you, so don't say anything incriminating. And we'll all, everyone who's here today will get the link to the recording and additional resources next week.
I love it.
So I trust you, Rachelle.
You trust
you're my
me?
buddy. Yeah. And it turns out that other people, not just in the decarbonization world, but just normal people as well, trust chefs almost more than they trust anybody else.
Which if you're a chef, seems really shocking.
It's pretty cool. So you gotta be careful what you say.
Yeah, right.
Why is that, Rachelle?
Well, with Building Decarbonization Coalition, we work in several different areas. One of the areas we work in is consumer inspiration. We go out and share really exciting and beautiful stories. And one of the best stories, but one of the hardest stories when you talk about an all-electric building is kitchens, y'all, right? I mean, we have some amazing, I can't wait to introduce our guest here because I want to talk why chefs are really important. Then I'm going to tell you where we are, and then we're going to introduce the guest today. So it is really difficult when you say, and we're going to talk about heat pumps because, oh my goodness, they're the greatest. But when you talk about electrifying a building, there's not the same emotional pull until you say kitchens. And again, I have one of the top appliance experts here, and we're going to talk about what we've got in front of us and why kitchens are really an exciting part of the conversation, but initially, not so much. Now, chefs are very, very trusted, not only to talk about the kitchen space, probably because, I don't know, we don't pull any punches, but we've done some really amazing polling. And across the board, when we talk about home and building electrification, people trust medical professionals to an extent. They're really up there. Friends and family are the top. And then chefs come along. And chefs are often friends and family, so they make amazing and trusted messengers. So I appreciate your trust in me. And I'm really honored to take part in this conversation. We want to talk about, again, introduce our guests. And one of the main things is we're going to talk today about how do we speak about induction cooking? What the heck is it? How does it work? And why is it, to me, one of the most exciting conversations that happens in all of building decarbonization? Good?
That sounds great, Rachelle. Maybe it's time to talk about some of our friends here.
I love it. So I want to give a quick context. So many of you may know that I lived in the California Bay Area for 30 years. I have moved home to Maine. My mom is here. I need to be with my family, but I also just need to be in Maine. And one of the amazing things is when I was looking of where do I live, I tell you, and I was about to sign on that dotted line, and this magical website popped up. And we were able to move into an amazing place called the Sandpiper. Y'all, this is an electric powered building. I have not only induction cooking in my very own apartment, but there is a chef's teaching kitchen downstairs, shortest commute ever. And being that this is what I live and breathe, it's really an honor. But speaking of living and breathing, heat pumps, y'all. We don't have the time today enough to talk about heat pumps, but you will talk about them. We have in our amazing audience, we have Dana Fisher here. I have never lived with a heat pump. I have been transformed. So as bananas as I am about induction cooking, I'm almost equally as blown away, if not the same as with heat pumps. So I am here in the Sandpiper, and with that, I want to introduce, we have two amazing guests. So Dave Holman, we're going to learn about you in a moment. This is a vision that you had, and Eric Agren, thank you so much. I want to introduce you both properly. Let's start with Dave. Dave, you are a builder and developer, and then we'll kick it over to Eric. Hi. Thanks for the building.
You're welcome. Thanks
I get to live here.
And we're happy to have you. This was a project that came to be with my best friend Jason Lord, who's a developer
Yes.
out in Minneapolis, that we did together. He had done green building and energy efficient buildings, and something I'm very passionate about,
Yeah.
where I've done historic renovations here in Maine, and
Yes.
done been responsible for the deaths of many fossil fuel heating systems that I'm proud of. And I'm doing it in part because it's the right thing to do for the environment, but I'm also doing it because of operating costs. You know, for my big business hat that I can wear sometimes, I care a lot about the long-term price of the utilities that I use, and fossil fuels are going to get fewer and fewer in number,
Yes.
and they're unreliable. They can spike, as we saw just in recent years. So baseload electricity is very much the safe bet when it comes to a power source. And in Maine, it's already 60% renewable because we get a lot of hydro from Canada. And I'd like to hope that by electrifying the building, it can at one point be 100% renewable. So that's what we tried to do here with Sandpiper, insulate it super well. A lot of the apartments, they're not even keeping their heat on these days because it's not cold enough for them to need a heat source. So that's a little bit about me in the building, and I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I love it. So we're going to have questions throughout because I know Matt, like as we cook, I want to introduce Eric, and then we're going to start cooking. And as we cook along, I really would love to talk about things that come to mind in the bigger picture for this. So Eric Agren, come on over, get in the kitchen. This is, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Please introduce yourself. You're one of the foremost appliance educators really in the nation, as well as you're a restaurateur and a culinarian. And so I was first introduced to you when I would come and visit my mom, and I would see your commercials. 5 years ago, you were telling me where you as a business owner are doing commercials about induction cooking. And so please introduce yourself, and what put you really ahead of this game? What made you really want to start talking about this even as long as 5 years ago?
Sure. My name is Eric Agren. My family owns Agren. We're the largest appliance retailer in the state of Maine. We have 7 locations, and we compete against the box stores. So Lowe's and Home Depot, those are our biggest competitors. And that leads into my answer to your question.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, we started doing advertising for induction. I personally have had induction in my house for over 8 years. And induction was invented in 1955 by Frigidaire. It's been around a very, very long time. But we started advertising, and we started to educate people about induction really on a business sense, because we compete with the box stores. We have the same exact price that they do. We even have their price on our digital price tags on an induction cooktop in our showroom. Why buy from us versus a box store? Our education and our commitment to technology, always having the newest, coolest stuff on our showrooms, having accessibility to all the neat stuff out there in the market.
Yeah.
That's kind of why we started to do it with induction.
Nice.
Also, I'm a true believer that it is the best performing piece for cooking, period.
I love it.
Regardless of, a 35,000 BTU burner in a
Yes.
restaurant that's gas versus induction, I still think induction is better. So
I agree.
Hope that answers your question.
That is amazing. And we're going to start cooking and we want the conversation to go. And I want to point out that we have Dana Fisher from Mitsubishi as part of our live studio audience. He pointed out that going into your showrooms is just beautiful. You've got so much to choose from. And full disclosure for everybody, my husband does work at Agrin, so I want you to know that. But we really wanted to have you here because of your expertise. So thank you so much. So we're going to start cooking, because I know we're going to do a couple of things. I'm going to show some of the best sort of tips and tricks about how to talk about induction cooking. What is it? You've given a little bit of the history, and come on into the kitchen and we will cook a little bit. So what is induction cooking? From the very simplest science, it's really important to say sort of what it is and what it isn't. So again, when it comes to that conversation about electric kitchens, people immediately think of coils, or they think of like the flat top, which you still sell and they're still very good. The way that induction works is it looks very similar. That's a hard part, right, Eric, is sort of, you talk about education is sort of explaining the difference between what the radiant electric and induction is. Beneath this, there are copper coils. This makes a safe magnetic connection with the pan. The pan does need to be magnetized, which many of them are, and we can show you a test on that. And what this does is directly turns the pan into the heat source. So what I'm going to do as we talk a little bit more is I'm going to get some things started here, and we'll show a little bit about cooking. So I have some green beans. We're going to sear some mushrooms, but first I want to blanch the green beans off. So for you, Eric, if you can come on in, cut over into the kitchen, I'm going to put this on and give a little bit of your background, because you had a restaurant for 11 years.
I did?
Yeah.
Yep. So I worked for the family business most of my life, but I was lived in Chicago for 5 years. I was an internet analyst for the appliance industry.
Wow.
I was a VP for Maytag in sales nationally.
Nice.
Traveled a lot.
Got it. So room temperature water. I'll demonstrate while we chat.
And I did own a restaurant called Fuel for 11 and a half years.
Incredible.
I've been to Culinary Institute and so on and so forth. I cook
Amazing.
a lot. I cook about 40 hours a week.
Well, we'll get you cooking on some
Fuel,
stuff.
that's an ironic name.
Yeah.
I know, right?
That's right.
What's exciting is we're focusing today on residential. So as I said, what is induction? We are creating a heat source directly inside of this pan. We used to talk about friction, but we were actually at the Food Service Technology Center in Irwindale, and the team was like, it's not exactly friction. You're actually converting one source of energy to the next. But what I'll show you, and you've done this 1,000 times, but we really show that instantaneous water boiling. So we talked about what it's not. This is going to respond so fast. Eric, we find that this responds almost twice as fast as even those 25, 30,000 BTUs.
Yep.
And what's exciting is we're also seeing this technology now going more into restaurants. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. For you guys, I mean, we talked about this. What I'll do is I put this money here. Let me jump back for a second. I put the money here because this is a demonstration we show that you're really not turning this is not going to catch on fire. When you are training your staff, what are some things that you talk about when it comes to just this direct, immediate power that you like to teach or showcase for everybody? And then the off?
Yeah, it's instantaneous.
Right?
Yeah, the control is by far the best.
Right.
Even with a gas cooktop, if you have a grate over the gas burner
Yeah.
and you turn that burner off, you're still going to have residual heat from the grate. And these new ranges, people want big, huge, heavy, commercial-looking grates
Right.
that hold the heat. If you have have radiant and you
Yes.
turn this off, it is going to stay hot forever because the
incredible.
glass holds the heat. The burner is underneath the glass is still hot.
Yeah.
Induction has none of that. How I kind of go through the sales pitch is
Yeah.
that there is some ferrous material that does vibrate.
Yes.
So when you just think of this is a very simple technology.
This is almost coming up to boil too. You can see that.
Yep. So in very, very simple terms, it's a little more complicated than this, but picture two wires connected to a magnet
Yep.
underneath the glass. When the current runs through that magnet, it vibrates very, very fast.
Yes.
The ferrous material in the metal pot then transfers that energy to itself.
It's amazing.
So it goes up the side of the pot, it goes all around the pot, so you get completely even heat and heat all the way around your food.
Yeah.
So it's going to cook a lot faster and it's immediate.
Yep.
And it's super fast.
Yep.
It is 8 times faster than a normal gas range
Yeah.
for your home and about 15 times faster than an electric range, no matter what type.
Yep.
So coil or radiant. The neatest part is that things don't get hot.
Yes.
That
Look.
that creates insane benefit.
Yes.
So think of the residual heat in your house. If you have a big gas burner on, first you do have some burning off of chemicals that happen, which is sometimes a concern, particularly in the new buildings that do not have ventilation.
Right.
Like
We have
my condo.
ventilation here at the Sandpiper. I love it.
Yeah, I live downtown Portland and I have no ventilation whatsoever. I
Yes.
have no vent over my stove. I have no vent.
Don't
for
you
my
know
dryer.
somebody who?
Yeah. So
And as you're talking, what I'm going to do, just back to the cooking for a second, this has come up to a really strong boil. And as we all know, you really, especially with your green vegetables, you want to keep that boil going quickly. So not only, as you're saying, there's no residual heat here, there is, the handles are really cool. And we're going to talk about this in terms of safety for your residents, because I feel very safe, but I can also cook better. So I'm going to put this in, and then the recovery is really fast on this. In the restaurants, what you do is you have that big giant pot of water. It's always boiling and you're dunking in your vegetables. So this almost creates that same thing. So talk about that. And then I want to jump into a couple questions for you about the Sandpiper.
yeah, the benefits of having no heat is that, first of all, there's no heat, so it's very safe. The cooktop never, ever gets hot. There's zero heat. I'm going to say it a few times.
Right.
You can put your hand right
Here,
next to this thing
I'll
while
just
it's
put the
on.
money right back there.
And the benefit for that is safety, but
Yeah.
also if you're doing sugar or caramel or something sticky and
Yes.
you spill it on your cooktop, you're going to be able to wipe it off very easily
Yeah.
because it's not going to burn on.
Yeah.
Cleanability is by far the best for induction, by far.
I will
Also-
demonstrate that for you all.
Yeah, very, very simple. Also, the heat coming off of the cooktop, like a gas range or a radiant, you have a lot of heat coming into your room. So there's a cost involved in the summertime if you're cooking. Also, there's smoke and stuff coming up into your ventilation. You don't need as much ventilation as you do for induction as you do for gas, for example. Because you need to extract that extra heat, you need to extract the stuff that it's burning off. And that can save you a lot of money. And you use it very, very infrequently. And it's
Absolutely.
absolutely immediate.
Very
And
hot,
this really is warm, but
right?
very, very
No third-degree burns.
correct.
We won't sue you, we promise. So, and for me, living in the apartment, so some of the apartments here have the Ridian electric and some of them have the induction. And we were talking a little bit about, we talk about, I don't have to crank up my heat pump. Thank you, Dana. Mitsubishi's in the house. I don't have to crank up my heat pump. I only put it on because my cats just love to bask in the little bit of heat glow of it, but I'm not having to constantly run tons of ventilation. I'm not having to constantly run and cool my house with the heat pump. So it's a huge win. And also to the safety factor where I'm not catching on fire, I'm not getting those same burns. You saw that not only could Eric touch the cooktop, but the handles stay cooler. Now I'm gonna heat this up. We're gonna do a little searing. Because boiling is always something we love to show. But let's do this. We're going to crank this baby on. There's a lot of questions about cookware, but I want to, Matt, you had a question too earlier about for Dana or sorry, for Dave. Sorry, what was it about building those?
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
Actually,
And meanwhile, I'm heating this up. We'll talk about pans in a minute because there's a whole question about pans. I'm heating up cast iron. Yes, it takes a little bit longer, but not nearly as long, to your point, as if it were on gas or any other type of cooking. So while this happens, take it away.
So we know, we're here in Brunswick, Maine, right?
Yes.
It's the, yeah. Yeah, the largest New England state by land area, right? The largest New England state in terms of number of pine trees, probably,
Yes,
and the most heat pumps per capita of any state in the country.
that makes Dana very happy.
Yeah, so this is big business here, building electrification. But to be honest, we get a lot of questions about that at BDC about kind of what it looks like out in the marketplace, what's the consumer attitude. I wonder if you could speak to kind of what you're hearing from folks in the building about it.
Yeah, it's a great question.
And meanwhile, I'm gonna sear some mushrooms. You saw how quickly this came up. Eric, I think this is something you probably teach people is you actually have to learn to prep all your stuff in advance, and then you have to learn to turn things down. So go ahead, take it away.
I think, for us, using heat pumps and shifting to heat pumps, because we acquire a lot of existing historic buildings.
Right.
Where landlords just do it the way it's always been done, because that's what's there and that's what they know. Our summers used to never need AC. When I grew up, maybe 4-6 days a year, you want AC, and the others you just open a window. Now, it's getting really hot in the summertime, and heat pumps provide that versatility where it can dehumidify, it can heat, and it can cool all
Yeah,
from
2 in 1.
Exactly, and it's filtering the air, it's got hypoallergenic filters in it that we clean periodically. So it's providing a lot of services that your old boilers, Reheat heaters, things like that do not provide, and it's consolidating many separate systems into one. The other thing we have here at the Sandpiper is.
So does that make a smaller footprint
Much
to an
smaller.
extent? Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep, and you get a lot of your infrastructure out of the dark, dank, dirty basements of the old 1800 buildings. There's a condenser that sits outside, it's a big fan, it spins air, and there's a beautiful sleek head inside that gives you, hot or cold air on demand. Contrary to myths of the early heat pumps, it works no matter how hot or cold it is. You might pay a little more in your electric bill if it's -20 outside.
Got it.
But it's still blowing 70-degree air, and I know this because I've lived with them for 11 years.
And that's coming from a Mainer.
My house.
A
11
Mainer.
Years. Well, it would, we Mainers love our wood stove too.
Yeah.
Here at the Sandpiper, we also added individual ERVs, energy recovery ventilators to each unit. So if someone has COVID on the first floor, you're not sharing air with the whole building. You're not sharing it with a single neighbor. Every unit is totally isolated in terms of its airflow.
You better not call out sick, Rachelle.
I can just breathe on everybody in this building.
They all take fresh air continuously from the outside and exhaust stale air from the inside. So whenever anyone's cooking, taking a hot shower, all those things, there's a continuous flow and the heat is retained. So in the winter, we're spitting out the stale air, but we're not spitting out the heat. There's an exchange process happening where the vast majority of the heat is retained. And that's, again, partly because we want to do the right thing and make everyone healthier, but partly because it is the more economical way to manage a building.
I love that.
We want to keep all of our heat that we paid for, in the building and not have it exhausted out into the cold winters here.
Well, we appreciate it. And Eric, I want to talk to you about, there's a lot of questions that people have. We're going to jump back into the food. So it's like a variety show. Back in the 70s, some of you, fine. So we are jumping in, but there's often a question about you can't sear. So there's a lot of myths. This is a lion's mane mushroom. There's a lot of myths. You were talking about things, the speed and the efficiency. When you're putting mushrooms in the pan, I can put more. Can you describe or talk about how you speak to searing and high heat cooking?
Sure.
Thank you.
Some of the things that will affect that are your cookware. And going back to your cookware,
Yes.
most all cookware, 80 to 90% of cookware will work on an induction surface.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, and if you go buy a $3 aluminum pan at Walmart, it's probably not going to work. If you can put a magnet and it sticks to the pan, it will work. That's carbon steel, that's cast iron, that's all clad, for example, Calphalon, Caraway, even those pans, I use those pans, are great.
Right.
They work on induction. However, they do work at varying levels. So
And I only really learned this better because we did an event with Energy Star and we worked on the new Samsung range. And the Samsung range has the pan detector that gives you a percentage of compatibility.
Yep. Both LG and Samsung have cooktops that you can purchase that you put the pan on it and it'll give you a scale of 1 to 10,
Yes.
how well it's going to work.
Yes.
A cast iron would be a 15. It would be the best way, either that or carbon steel. They're very magnetic, they're very thick, and you can sear, you can do any style of cooking on induction just as equally well as on gas.
I love it.
100%, no question about it.
And shout out to LG and Samsung, both members of the Building Decarbonization Coalition. Hope you're on the webinar today.
I know. We love working with you.
Yeah, so all cookware will work unless a magnet doesn't stick to it, which is pretty uncommon.
I love it.
Yeah.
And that's such a great point because really that's something that people get really worried about. And I understand that. But as you said, not only is most cookware, but now more and more cookware is being made to be induction compatible because it's becoming such a big thing. Now, one of the things that I just touched on is what we do with the Building Decarbonization Coalition. We go out in the world, we turn on all these appliances, we have fun. I am so honored. Part of my job, I know it's a thing, is I work and grow a group called the Chefluencers. So back in 2019, when I started really working on this, it was kind of myself, and you guys might know Chef Chris Garlaza. We were across the country alone, like, why are all the chefs talking about induction? Of course, there was much more before that, but we really started to have this conversation because there are ordinances and building ordinances that were changing. Now, you built this building this way because you wanted to, which we're going to talk about that. And because, like you said, it's making more and more financial sense. And then you have people like me across the country going, oh, I'm going to live there no matter what. But I work to train a group of chefs called the Chefluencers. So because chefs are so trusted, when we did the Energy Star event, we have chefs from across the country, different language skills. We all get together and we really understand, like, what is the building decarbonization movement? Why is the kitchen the heart of it? And it's just a real honor. And it's one of the most exciting parts of my job. So shout out to the Chefluencers. And I can't wait for you guys to come and visit me in Maine. Right.
And that's so important too, Rachelle, because one of the things we try to do at BDC is really touch the consumer. And I know that, these fellows that are here with us today are really at the front lines of that.
Yeah.
And we know that the transition is never going to work if people don't want it. If people don't want it. And the one thing that the Chefluencers do really well is that they're evangelizing. They're out there telling people, hey, you might not know about this technology, but trust us, it's the best. And then people get to see it and it's very visceral and immediate for people.
Absolutely. Yep. And this is across the board. We have food. We really, people are very concerned about their traditions. We were just talking about actually Stanley Chang from Heston. I got to work up there. So he is one of the top cookware entrepreneurs in the world. And we really were talking with him a lot about the science of cookware, but also talking about woks. So people are concerned about, can you cook X type of traditional food on induction? Yes, absolutely. So we have Anthony Serrano. He's one of the Chefluencers. He does an amazing job. He's a second-generation Mexican-American restaurateur. So he shows everybody all the charring and everything that you can do. If you are wok cooking, it is really important to get a wide, flat bottom wok. We had a lot of fun at the Food Service Technology Center when we did our Chefluencer training early in the month, and we were seeing these big, gigantic commercial woks. They're remarkable. So we work a lot with one of our, I call it I say that he's a Chefluencer. We work a lot with celebrity chef Martin Yan from Yan Can Cook, and he's so in love with this technology. And he's actually working with groups in China to start bringing in commercial and residential woks that will really give enough pan coverage to really do amazing things. But it's a lot of fun to see our Chefluencers bring their traditions to the table, so to speak, and translate them in this amazing technology.
You mentioned Chef Chris too. I'm glad you brought that up. Hey, Chef Chris, if you're watching, Chef Chris out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Chef Chris.
One of the things that I learned from Chef Chris is how hot it can get in a restaurant kitchen. I'm sure you know something about this. It can get real hot in there, right? It's very uncomfortable especially towards the end of the night, right, for the people who are working in these kitchens. And one benefit of having an all-electric induction focused kitchen is you don't have that heat.
Yes,
You don't have that heat, you don't have that discomfort, right, or the fumes, right? And now that we're talking about comfy, cozy holiday atmosphere,
I know.
right? That's important, right?
yes.
What's that word, the Danish word?
Oh, hygge. So I lived in Sweden for a year. So my Swedish is not too bad after many, many years, but I lived in Sweden. So the concept of hygge, comfort, I've definitely really, like, I feel this is going to be my first winter in a while. So I'm diving right into hygge.
Looking forward to seeing you in your Fair Isle sweater,
Yeah.
you know, surrounded by.
I totally know how to box and snowshoes and all of that. But speaking of that, you know, we wanted to talk about entertaining for the holidays and things like that. And I know from the restaurant world, I'm sure there's things, and from your experience, there's things that you've brought into holiday entertaining from the induction side of things. You know, for me, if I'm doing for Thanksgiving, for example, a couple tips that I have for everybody. First of all, shop now. Get all of your shopping done now. What I don't do is next week go around like a maniac. So get your shopping done now. Order your turkey ahead, thaw it way ahead. So those are really important things if you're getting ready to celebrate the upcoming holiday. But I think a couple of things that I love for induction, and I also want to talk about, Eric, what I call the whole electric kitchen. Induction certainly is the centerpiece of it, but there's so much more in an electric kitchen today. So for me, it's, you know, get your, for the holiday, thinking of the hygge and the comfort, get a lot of things done ahead. I will get all my green beans. You saw that they were blanched. I'll get them blanched way ahead of time. I get my sauces done. I get my compound butters. I get everything done because on the day of, I really want to chill. I used to be like a fancy private chef. Y'all, I was George Lucas's private chef. I kid you not. It was the best. And one thing that but I'm not there for I'm not there on Thanksgiving. I don't do that.
George,
So
where are you on induction, George?
Huh?
Where are you on induction?
I know, George, where are you? Princess Leia would not be cooking on gas, people. So, you know, prepping and getting things ahead. But for you, Eric, tell us about a little bit more about things like what convection ovens can do now, steam ovens, combi steams, speed ovens. There's so much more to this conversation. I love that we focus on induction, but talk about some of the other things that you guys share and teach people about.
Sure. And that's part of the technology and innovation, the stuff that we have on our floor that you can go see and you can open the door and see how these things work. Steam ovens, they get up to 212 degrees and they just steam vegetables,
Amazing.
Salmon, those kinds of things. Very specific,
Yes.
but small, about
Yes.
this big, that would go in your wall.
Yes.
Speed ovens are a combination of halogen convection,
Yes.
which is just heated air moving around with a fan,
We get some butter.
and microwave all put together. So you can
They're
literally,
amazing.
yeah, they're amazing. You can do a full 5-pound chicken in about 20 minutes
Yes.
in a speed oven, and
Yes.
it comes out perfect.
With incredible quality.
Yes, incredible quality.
Yes.
Many of the wall ovens now or regular ovens have air fry built in.
Yes.
So you have a little basket. You don't even need the basket. You can just use whatever you want.
Yes.
But they have a stronger fan and algorithms built into their boards
Nice.
that will blow the heat around like an air fryer. And again, the results are not as good as a smaller air fryer in a
Nice.
smaller area, but still excellent.
Yep.
You can use your wall oven for a different purpose now.
Yep.
There's all kinds of technology that's out there, and you can literally buy 10 different appliances that'll do 10 different very specific things now.
Absolutely.
It's pretty neat stuff.
Yeah.
One thing about your Thanksgiving prep is that on an induction, say
Yes.
this was your gravy for your turkey.
Yes.
And you made the gravy and you don't want to mess with it, but you want it to stay warm. You can put it on this burner and
Yes.
turn it on low.
Yes.
And that low will be lower than body temperature.
Yes.
It's the lowest you can get, period.
Absolutely.
You can't get a gas range to do that ever. It's impossible. Nor can you get any other electric range to do that consistently at about 96 degrees.
It's incredible.
You can leave it there all day long. And it'll
So
be fine.
it's even lower than melt. So it's like warm. Yep. So the whole electric kitchen is incredible. And for your salespeople, you know what yes, there is an appliance does for everything, but you can actually shrink your kitchen footprint. Like you're talking about, you can shrink that kitchen footprint because things have multiple function. So similar, like we talked about with the heat pumps, it's the same in the kitchen. So like I got to the point with my private chef world where like if somebody didn't have a combi steam, and it's like, sorry, I can't cook there. Just because I know, so bratty, rude. I would bring my own induction hob if I needed. And let me talk about that too, because briefly we talked about what is induction, but I want to clarify something else. When you are speaking about induction, there are several versions of it. So you've got like a plug-in, what people might call a burner. It can go, it's a 110 plug-in, and it is called a hob. That confuses people sometimes. You can also call it a burner. What do you guys have call it a
We call
hob?
it burner. That
Yeah.
came from, the hob comes from the UK.
It does.
That's what they call it in England.
Absolutely. And it can be very confusing because they also call a cooktop that.
Yep.
Now, this piece right here, this is a cooktop. A cooktop drops into the counter. It's surrounded by countertop. And of course, cooktops can be everything, gas, electric, and all induction. Then there is a range. So in my apartment, love it, I've got the range, which is the cooktop and the oven all together. So when you're out there and you're talking about induction, you can sometimes people say stove, but the word stove is a little amorphous. So I will try to sometimes say either, a hob, a cooktop, or a range. So hopefully that helps. But I think we've defined induction and talked about what it's not. We certainly talked a little bit about holiday prep. I want to give another holiday tip for everybody. When I go to people's houses, I will invariably, if you don't mind, I usually do a little busing. For the holidays, please set up a busing station in your home. Because what happens is people put their glasses, they put everything all over the place. So I set aside an area just for glassware, right? So try that. That's a little tip. But if you put all your glassware at once, and then what you do is the end of the day, you just run your glassware. So you're not like rooting through everything. So that's my one tip. You do that?
Yeah, we got for our wedding, Katrina and I, some very, very fragile wine glasses, and they scare me so much.
Yes.
So I keep them segregated from everything else.
They're in the garage.
Because I have two kids that are 7 and 5. I can't trust them around those glasses.
Yeah, I know. So in terms of, we've talked a little bit about, we talked about air quality. You've mentioned rightfully so that we do have ventilation here. You don't need as much, but you still need some. What is really exciting with induction is in terms of your air quality, and this is another thing that's really nice to speak to, is that, like you're saying, you're not getting nearly the same heat, but you're also not getting the fumes, the gas, which is NOx gas, there's formaldehyde, there's benzene, there's all kinds of things that are now nowhere in this building. It's really wonderful.
That's not Huga.
That is not Huga. No. It is another Swedish word, but I don't know those. Yeah, I forget. It's like 35 years ago. Yeah, but you're also not doing that. And then in terms of particulate matter, that's a big difference. Can you talk about that? Because particulate matter is not something that people always think about. So the way it manifests in my house is I have these pretty glass like lights, and I don't have to wipe them off as much. Talk about particulate matter and induction cooking.
The difference mainly is with gas. So if you have a gas cooktop versus an induction cooktop,
yes,
and you turn on a gas burner, it's naturally convected.
Yes.
It moves air around. So even if you don't have a pot,
and you can see it almost.
You can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't have a pot on the gas burner,
yes,
it is delivering some sort of fume, and it's pushing it up into the air.
Right.
And it's convecting over and over again. If you have all 4 burners on,
yes,
you're going to create quite a lift of air,
yes,
which will then lift onto your teardrop lights or wherever, the top of your hood.
Yes.
Those things are going to get dirty. They're also going to get greasy. This has none of that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it one more time, there's no heat.
Yes.
It
It's
makes
incredible.
a significant difference.
Yes. I am the height. How old are your kids?
7 and 5.
Okay, I'm probably the same size as a 7-year-old.
Just about.
Yeah. So when you're 4'11" or 1.5 meters, that really comes into play when you're not having to like have all this excess heat. And it's just really nice too when you're entertaining. The other thing that's fun, because you have little ones, yes, and Elizabeth has little ones. What is really, really nice too is that not only can you teach them to cook at an earlier age, but also what I love is when I'm doing things with kids or any age, I can actually serve right from the cooktop. So you can have, I mean, this pan, we talked about pans, this pan gets hot over time, but it's really nice because if I have some food here in this pan or the other cookware, I can actually serve right from there. Or like kids are like, probably like my cats, like they get on the countertop. Right?
You really can't overstate the importance of, I mean, my kids are gonna find a way to get hurt.
Find it.
It's 2 boys, yeah, and I'm sure there's some other people out there, thoughts and prayers.
Yes.
You know, if you're in that situation, but this is it's a real cool thing, right, for induction.
Yeah.
To be totally safe and totally heat-free, right?
Yeah. I love it. So when you guys were building this, you were saying that like you initially, like you know some of these things and you know what you wanted to have. And I had asked you how many people at this point, because this is a very forward-thinking building, how many people at this point were like Rob and I, where we're like, we are going to move in now. Are you seeing people choosing it? And I will tell you, when we meet up when we're meeting each other in the building, whether they came to it or not, they're noticing and talking about the things that you thought of for us.
Yeah, that's a great question. You're definitely the vanguard. I would say most of the people moving into our apartments it's their first experience with induction cooking.
Nice.
But many of them have heard about it as this kind of fancy,
Right.
sexy, cool thing.
That's
Right.
great, because
Kind of
we've been
want.
yelling really loud.
Yeah.
Although they never got California.
They needed.
They saw Eric's
reason to
commercials.
make the jump.
Yeah.
And so I think most of the people going into our upgraded units, you know, we have about 15 of the 63 apartments here.
Yes.
With induction ranges. We are training them, we're teaching them what it is and how it works, and they're loving it.
Yes.
We've not heard a single complaint, it's getting adopted, so I think developers, landlords can be the tip of the spear in introducing this to people who never in their lives probably would have chosen it.
Right.
Once they get it, they won't go back. The other perspective that I think is really important for the built environment, is the safety factor. You know,
Yes.
that our nightmare is buildings burning down, and those electric and gas ranges are the way they usually do burn down. If they malfunction, if people aren't paying attention, et
Yeah.
cetera, and the difference in safety for induction is extreme. And our insurance agent is working up a quote for our next building of 170 apartments, what the difference in premium would be
Yes.
of all induction versus all electric. And my insurance agent hadn't heard of it either. She thought it was a new kind of.
We were just chatting about this the other day.
There's a lot of education that has to go on, but like that
Yes.
industry will save millions, if not billions of dollars because of these kind of ranges, and people will save their own lives by not dying in fires
I love
across
it.
the country. So I think it's really important technology from the safety side.
I love it. We couldn't, and same question for you. I know we're getting to the end. What's our timing? Yeah,
Q&A.
getting almost to Q&A, but the same question to you, Eric. You've been way ahead on this. So thank you for educating people in Maine and beyond with your commercials and just with your staff and your stores. Same thing for you. Are you seeing people coming in asking for this? Certainly, again, your client has probably seen your commercials, so they may be asking, what are you seeing in sort of the trend of people asking for this or requesting?
It's a little of both. So people are
Mhm.
coming in and asking, and a lot of it is due to air quality.
Ah,
So a lot of people are really, really concerned with air quality. They have gas ranges in their homes. They don't
Right.
have proper ventilation. They have young children. That is one driver. The better driver, I think, overall is cost.
yes.
So this induction cooktop costs twice of what a regular cooktop would cost 5 years ago. Now it's a couple $100 more.
There's about a couple $100 difference of its equivalent in gas.
Correct.
Yep.
So now, even with, we're in Black November right now, which
Yes.
is wild, but
Thank you for having any time for us.
yeah.
We're very fortunate.
I was really trying to. But we have, I'll mention LG again. It's they're a strong partner of ours.
They're
I'm not preferential of any brand, but they have some neat technology, and they have a slide-in range now that costs less than its Radiant counterpart.
Yes.
Because it's on sale, but the pricing is becoming even.
Yep.
And when the price becomes
So
even
it's the Radiant, meaning the flat
The-
top electric,
with-
just
yes,
for people, yep,
with heat underneath.
correct.
And don't forget that there are rebates available in tons of jurisdictions around the country, so make sure to check if you're watching this.
Yes.
Whether there's an incentive, so that might actually make the induction range cheaper. than
Cheaper?
the alternative.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's
So you're seeing
also,
pricing coming
yeah,
down.
when it's even, in my opinion, there is zero reason not to buy an induction, zero. It's been cost over the
Yep.
past few years, but
Yep.
now that that's almost gone, I can't fathom that this would not be all of our electric range business within a few years.
It's very exciting.
Zero reason.
Well, thank you for continuing to educate on that. And again, we've talked about safety, we've talked about thermal comfort, we've talked about sort of the speeds and efficiencies. There's also, and then air quality, we touched on it a little bit, but there are very, very important studies that are really showing a very direct causality between the fumes of gas and childhood asthma. So this is all very well documented, it's not disputed. And so that is a driver. When I was on the sales floor in California, we were seeing people coming just for that alone. And then like oh, but wait, there's more. I say it's, but wait, there's more. Oh, wow, I can cook faster, I'm safer, and all of those things. So there are so many things. For those of you, again, that are trying to explain this, trying to demonstrate it, certainly, I will be boiling water to my dying day. There will probably, I think boiling water and showing how fast that is and how fast it goes off is amazing. Melting chocolate is a really simple and fun demonstration. Any kind of saute or sear, this is also something we do. So there's a lot of ways to show it, but it's a little hard because you do kind of often have to show it, right? So that can be a little, how do you help your staff? We just have one more minute, but how do you encourage your staff to get excited about it and bring this to offer it to somebody who may be on the fence? Like, what is a sales technique that you all use?
It kind of speaks for itself. We really don't have a lot of these hooked up live, unfortunately, because of the way our showrooms are set up. That may change because it really is effective to show people how fast this thing is and how accurate it is.
Nice.
But it's the benefits. It truly is a list of the benefits for the consumer for not much more money.
Nice.
And at the end of the day, it's the most efficient, best performing thing at an affordable price that's going to last longer as well, because they just don't break. That's such an important thing. One more time on that and a little bit more clarity, and we'll get to questions in a moment. That's an important thing for people to know. Yeah, if you think of a heating element, think of your hairdryer. You've got this little spiral thing inside, right? Yep. And you get something on it, you get a piece of lint or whatever it might be, and you're going to burn a hole through it and it's going to break. Correct. That is a magnet. That's it. Right. It's not going to break. It's almost impossible. And it's pretty sealed under here. It's totally sealed. We see almost zero service on these things. That's amazing. So the benefits are insane. I mean, really, once you start talking about it, it's like, why would you possibly buy a Radiant or a coil versus an induction? It's really just a list about the benefits. I could just tear up. Thank you so much. There's so much more. The features, the benefits, the way they show us, we could go on. I just want to show you all, this is really lovely. So I had some sauteed, they're not wild mushrooms, but cultivated mushrooms. By the way, you walk out here, there's just chanterelles just growing by the path.
Rachelle, don't turn away, then everyone will move you.
Fine, I couldn't believe it. In California, you have to like scale mountains to get them. So it's very exciting. But we have a little bit of wild mushrooms. So you saw that I was able to very easily blanch the green beans, get that green blanch to come right back, the water to come right back. Really easy to saute. I could saute a lot more mushrooms all at once. And then to your point, just a beautiful soft melted butter that we can drizzle on top. So I thank you so much for this. Any more questions? One more question for Dave, and then let's get to our question and answer. But again, so much more to say. We could only cover what we could, but thank you so much. So one more question to you, or do you want to hit the, oh, you had talked about what would make, Matt, you wanted to know from Dave, what would make this even more doable?
That's right, yeah.
Building a building like this.
What do you think is, we talked about a lot of benefits, right? The benefits of induction, the benefits of the heat pump systems, the ERVs you mentioned, right? The comfort, the thermal comfort. Why isn't everyone doing this? What would lead to more of these being built?
I think it's a great question. A lot of people inherit what they're given and they don't question it because it's worked in the past. And I think ultimately it'll be economics that govern the final switch. I mean, just like a manual transmission used to be the way we all drove cars with a stick shift.
Correct.
And then the automatic came along and it was more expensive initially. Then they gained price parity. And now if you want your stick shift, you gotta go pay 2,000 or 3,000 extra
Right.
to get an outdated way of doing it. And I think induction heat pumps, these are technologies that are rapidly evolving. The heat pumps are getting more and more efficient every few years, whereas your boiler, that technology kind of peaked, around when I was born, and it hasn't gotten much more efficient, and it can't. We've kind of squeezed all the juice out of fossil fuel technologies that we can by and large. And we're seeing rapid adoption, in places like Maine and countries like Norway, where there are, carbon trading incentives going on.
Yes.
Efficiency Maine is a great organization that we have here.
Huge shout out to Efficiency Maine. They did my mom is a fixed income senior. They redid her home with ventilation and put in all of these things because that's what they do.
And that's all from taxing polluters, basically, which is if you're gonna tax something, that's what we want to tax. So it's a great way to generate, savings and efficiency and cleaner environments, I think, for the society around us. And I think the biggest challenge we face here in Maine and across the country is zoning and density. And I'll say just very briefly, there's so much efficiency. This building has a 12,000 square foot footprint. We have 63 apartments, so that's quarter acre, 63 apartments with underground parking. We don't need to be clear cutting our forests to create sprawling subdivisions.
Yeah.
People want to live close to each other. They want community in places like this. And I think, gathering in the kitchen around these great appliances, from Agrin, from others, is a great way to build that community.
And that is like a perfect outro.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Great reminder
So
of what we're all about.
absolutely.
Here at the Decarbonization Coalition, right?
And there's beautiful trees all around, and thank you for the trees. Cool.
Yeah, the trees, thank you.
I literally went out and wrapped green ribbons around all of them, and then the loggers got mad at me because they wanted to take some, and there's compromises you have to make, right?
Yes.
There's safety, there's other things. So
That's right. You were talking about wood stoves earlier, so.
A wood stove is actually a very good low carbon way to generate heat. It's much better than fossil fuels because the wood can regenerate in 30 years, whereas you need new, crushed dinosaurs to get your oil and gas. So there's pros and cons to everything, and I think we're on the right track.
Well, thanks for fighting the good fight out there. We've got a couple of questions, a couple more minutes for questions from the audience here. Let me see. I've got my helpful document.
Thank
here.
you so much.
Jessica, from from BDC.
Jessica.
So we've got this is a big topic that comes up a lot. So some folks have experienced in induction ranges that they've used a little bit of buzzing. I wonder if Eric, you could address that. Is that something that they're working on to fix?
It's common and it's hard to get rid of entirely because it's the noise of that magnet vibrating.
Yeah.
There's not much you can do about it. There's insulation that can be put around the magnet itself that will help, but you're always going to hear something, and that's not going to go away anytime soon. There are varying degrees. Usually less expensive, very inexpensive induction is going to be a lot louder than a very high end.
And you saw this one. This is a GE profile, and it was absolutely silent. So part of it is that, and sometimes it's also the cookware. Sometimes the way that the cookware is made and the way the metal is sandwiched can also create some of that vibration. But you heard here, we heard nothing. And like usually the microphones can pick it up. So to your point, they don't all work the same, but for some people it can be. And when you have the plug-in units, the hobs, they can be buzzy. So sometimes people get them and they're like, oh, but you heard these were silent. And this is a very reasonably priced induction top. So I just put this back on and it's silence.
If that ventilation would be louder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, your ventilation.
Rob says the ventilation would be louder, and that's correct. That's a good point.
Correct.
So we talked about searing, right? We seared the mushrooms a moment ago. We've got a question about searing. Charring poblanos and Alameda peppers on a cast iron grill. that tends to give people a little bit of a hard time. Can you talk about maybe how you would approach doing it?
Yes, yeah, and so Anthony Serrano, he's, again, I mentioned him, he's one of our Chefluencers, second generation Mexican American, and then we have Juan Gen Juan, who is also one of our new Chefluencers. So when you are charring peppers, you definitely need a cast iron pan or a comal, the flat cast iron, get that nice and hot. Oil the pepper and then let it sit there and just turn it. So in the same way that you would do it in the flame where you kind of have to turn it and turn it, it's the same idea, but it's less dangerous. You're not having watch it. So you can leave it in the pan, walk away, do other things, and not worry that it's going to kind of become like a pile of ash in your flame. So it takes slightly more time, but it's a very safe way to go. So I love doing it that way, and it gets all the thumbs up from people in our chef community that's their tradition. So great question. And same with tortillas and naan.
So you can really do it all.
All the things.
One more question here. So I've got a question about the cookware.
Yes.
You said that there's a lot of different materials. Someone asked, why would you use aluminum at all? Why would you use aluminum in a multi-layer pan? Can you speak to kind of what the manufacturing decisions are here? Is it a costing? Are there performance characteristics that people were going for in different types of materials?
Yeah, I mean, we were just speaking with somebody we really admire who's a cookware expert, but aluminum is, it's not often used in the surfaces of pans anymore. I think that people are getting away from that. Restaurant cookware can be solid aluminum, and that's not always great. So you're not seeing it as much, but in terms of like for you, what you've noticed here, this of course is pure cast iron. This, I believe, this is a Heston pan. This is copper on the outside, and I believe an aluminum going through. Can you speak to aluminum a little bit in cookware?
Yeah, it's about the cost.
Yep.
It really is all about the cost. Nickel and stainless are far more expensive.
Yep.
And aluminum is basically used as a filler. It's light, it conducts heat
Very light.
really well.
Yes.
And it's cheap. So that is really the main driver of using aluminum.
Yes.
You can get all aluminum pans. We use those at the restaurant all the time. And that just required us to use 9 sticks of butter in each pan, so nothing stuck to it. So
exactly.
you were eating 1,000 calories before you even put the food in there.
Exactly.
But they're not going to, pure aluminum's not going to work on induction. It's very inexpensive. It conducts heat well, but not evenly.
Yeah.
Invest in a $20 cast iron pan. You're going to
Absolutely.
be much happier.
And what I've noticed too, what's so great is because the heat is so great and so even and so repeatable, what I can do is, although this is clearly it's cast iron, it's not nonstick, it's fairly well seasoned, but it's really easy for me to fry eggs in there because the heat control is so great that upstairs in my apartment, I know, okay, I'm going to put it on 6 and I'm going to back off, and I know that it's going to make a nonstick surface out of this because of my heat control. So it's awesome.
So we're nearing the end. I have one more question. One word from both of you.
Okay.
Would you put soap on a cast iron pan?
Sometimes.
No.
Okay, all right, we're gonna talk about this
Yes.
after, we
I had to think about it. Yep.
Okay, I had to think about it. Controversial topic, folks.
He's always here to stir the pot.
That's right. Well, we're at the end of our time here. I want to thank everyone who attended today to the webinar. I want to thank everyone watching online later. And thank you so much to Eric and Dave for being here.
Yes.
And obviously to Rachelle and to Rob.
Yes.
Rachelle.
Robert Rob.
Set up today. And everyone, all the members of the Building Decarbonization Coalition. It's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to work with you every day. And don't forget to visit our website at buildingdecarb.org to sign up for the newsletter, join our coalition. And thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.